guys? Welcome to Garner Station. This is another podcast of the Economic Development Department here in the town of Garner. Today we have with us Michael Haley, the Executive Director of the Wake County Economic Development Group, and then Timothy Downs, is the VP of Durham County Economic Development at the Chamber over there. Appreciate you guys joining us. Today's podcast is all about regionalism. And I know this has been kind of a hot topic. We're coming off the heels of the North Carolina Economic Developers Association conference. We had a little bit about it down there, and it seems like regionalism and economic development is kind of the new buzzword of the day, right? So I think first off, Michael, if you want to lead us off, tell us a little bit about Wake County Economic Development, kind of what y'all's role, what y'all do over there, and kind of how it fits within the idea of regionalism here in the Research Triangle Park.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thanks, Joe, for having us. This is going to be great. So, Wake County Economic Development provides economic development services across Wake County. So, we work in partnership with all 12 of our municipalities in the Research Triangle Park, including Garner, across a number of areas. Traditional business recruitment and expansion, existing industry, economic development projects, that sort of area, as well as marketing and communication, brand awareness, telling our story, not only around the country but around the world. Focusing on talent, that's what this market is about. I know we're going to talk about that some today, but talent's absolutely critical to what we do. Something that Timothy and I have talked a lot about of late is the issue of inclusive and equitable economic development, something that's very important to our region for sure. And then finally, entrepreneurship and innovation is absolutely important. It's the sort of the next generation of great companies that we're going to have in our market. So that's a little bit about what Wake County Economic Development does.
Sure. And I imagine, Timothy, that's kind of similar, maybe a little bit different over there. But how do you guys see yourself within the region at Durham and at the Chamber?
Sure. Yeah, well, the Chamber acts as the agent for Durham County. Fortunately, unfortunately, I only have one municipality to deal with, that's the city of Durham. But yeah, we serve in essentially the same role: attraction, retention, entrepreneurism, all those sorts of things. And Durham benefits greatly by being in a strong region.
Sure.
And again, as Michael said, we work together a lot, specifically the park, because it crosses both Wake and Durham counties. And so regionalism is important for us to be successful, and we find it important to be a good part of that too. So it's very important for us.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think something that's really interesting is because if we look at it as a whole, right, the town of Garner is a very small piece of the Research Triangle region. But even Durham County and Wake County are really just two counties within 16 county area. So the RTP region really stretches out. It's very diverse, and to me, I think that makes us very unique and adds a lot of value to it. But as you guys, work on projects, because I know Wake County and Durham work together a lot.
Yep.
Just talking about the USDA project, the military command project, of course, HQ2, all those things, huge, high-profile projects that you guys are working on. Kind of what role did regionalism play in to those projects, and how do you guys manage? Of course, you want things to come to Durham, you want things to come to Wake County, no doubt. Everybody wants to come to RTP, but how do you manage that relationship so that everybody's working together, but at the same time pulling for your own team?
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd say this. One, something we say a lot, I know the three of us have talked about this before, is economic development's a team sport, number one. I think that's the most important aspect when we think about regionalism, is thinking about ourselves as one team. We're the Research Triangle region team. And to your point, Joe, you're exactly right. For us, if it's a specific project or something like that, of course you want opportunities to come to your community. The good thing about our region, though, is that those opportunities impact the entire region. So we're real lucky that those sort of borders, those geographic or political borders, really don't impact the broader impact of a project or the opportunity they present. So that's really important, I think. That's sort of a level set for us, is regionalism first, partnership first, and then the opportunities come from that.
And as Michael said earlier, the talent is the key.
Yeah.
So when a project's looking, even if it's only looking in Durham County, talent's going to come from all over the region.
Sure.
So we've got to keep that in mind, even if it's, we might consider it an easy response, if you will. The talent is all over the region, so we, we consult, we work with all of our regional partners to the extent that we need to make sure that that talent is available and strong and will remain so. So, me being sort of the new guy at the table here in the Triangle, what I see is just an amazing attribute of this community is the talent, and that's not a novel thought. For me, though, it's new, and whatever we can do, however we can do it, working together on that talent piece is critical.
Right.
And I think that plays into another aspect that really helps us when it comes to these projects, when it comes to working as a region, and that is, Wake and Durham, just those two counties alone, right side by side, they complement each other so well. And then you add in the outlying counties that again, you can live and work and play in 3 different areas, and it's all one region, so it all works really well together.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this before on a few projects, this idea of fluidity within the labor
Yep.
force. And we ran a study with the Calculated Workforce Development Board, working with them to look at just how big of a pull do we have. And,
Right.
and it is amazing at how far people drive to come to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's only going to get more and more so that way, and it's really interesting how things kind of played off. And the other piece with this talent thing, I know you've got Duke in your backyard, obviously NC State here in Wake County, and then Chapel Hill there in Orange. Education has to be a huge part of regionalism,
Right.
and it has to be what's driving some of what you guys are seeing. What have site selectors and folks like that talk to you about how we stack up with other regions in the United States? I know talent's a huge piece.
Right.
That seems to be kind of the buzzword of the day, right?
So I'll say 2 things to your question. I'll answer it in 2 ways. One, you're exactly right. The higher ed and then the broader educational ecosystem is absolutely critical. The undergirding of that is certainly our 3 Tier 1 research universities that you listed off. What's really great about this market in this region, though, is it's not just those 3. We've got all these amazing universities, including 3 historically black colleges and universities, Shaw, St. Aug's, Central, 2 amazing community colleges that are some of the best in the country at innovating and driving innovation, how they're supporting existing companies. And you add in 2 very large K through 12 systems, and you've got this great ecosystem. The other thing I'll say quickly about that is your question brings up an important point, that when we're talking about economic development regionalism, it's not just on the project piece, the economic development project.
Oh, yeah.
Regionalism is really about how do we solve for very complex problems.
Sure.
That's really where it starts. Education, transit, transit and transportation. Those are the areas in which regionalism really, the most impact can be felt in those conversations, I think, and that's why it's important for us as a community to always think regionalism first, because it is these big, complex problems that getting around the table to solve is the most important thing for us.
And I know Joe Malazzo, that works
Yes.
over in y'all's office or in the same building, just had the trip to
Richmond.
Alexandria.
Yeah.
Richmond.
Yeah.
Both.
Of course, we're coming off the loss of the Durham
Light rail.
The light
Light
rail
rail.
project. That was a huge loss for everybody. This idea of transit and regionalism is huge, and I think as we move forward, it's only going to be more impactful.
Exactly right.
So I guess as you guys kind of go through the process of really leading 2 of the larger counties, what else are you guys seeing? What do you think is going to be really pushing the needle moving forward? I know you said obviously transit. I think that's huge. Everybody's in mind. Is there anything else out there that is not on people's minds that may be the next big thing? I know we talk about education. It seems like that's changing a little bit. You're seeing more technology going in there. I know in rural areas, broadband and healthcare have been major issues. And you hear healthcare, you don't necessarily think economic development. That's really a huge part of it.
Oh yeah.
And I guess what I'm getting at is kind of what you mentioned, Michael, is this idea about equitable economic development. Kind of making sure the rising tide actually does lift all ships. What are you guys doing in Durham to kind of make that happen and really push that message home?
Well, I think to piggyback off the last discussion, the last question, education, especially for Durham County, education is a big deal because we've got top to bottom some of the best schools and some of the worst schools in the state, and that's a problem. Just in general, it's a problem. You got to fix it. But I do think that regionalism plays a part in that as well, because again, when we talk to a client, when we talk to a growing business, when we talk to someone that's interested in starting something here, it's always about talent, and it's always about the pipeline. It's not about just existing talent. It's always what's going to be there in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So, Durham's trying hard to make economic development and the education system work hand in hand and work very smoothly, to the extent that, like, the chamber involved in some of the workforce development efforts. A couple other members of the chamber are involved in public school systems and foundation, and obviously very involved in Duke, and they do a lot for the public school system across the county, NCCU, and all those sorts of things. So it's a really active effort. But I do think there's an opportunity to look at this problem. And some people might not like to call it a problem, but I think you look at this problem from a regional aspect, because if Durham, as an example, doesn't increase the quality of their schools, then people are going to eventually choose Wake County or Chatham County or pick another one in our region over Durham as a place to live. I mean, it already happens for a variety of reasons, but long term, we've got to fix that so there's a better balance. I think, getting back to the earlier question as well, something I think that we've got to pay attention to, not just transit, but just infrastructure in general. I mean, we all know it. We all know you drive around the region, whether it's highways or other roads, surface streets, that's something that we've got to pay close attention to, because North Carolina historically has done a good job of keeping its roads, but with the growth in population here, just like in the Charlotte region, we've got to keep up. And like it or not, that has a big impact on economic development.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. I'd say too, a couple points around the equitable economic development, absolutely critical to the region, broadly speaking, in terms of what do we want the region to be as it continues to evolve, and it certainly is evolving. So the idea of creating as much widely shared opportunity as we can. So how do we best align the strengths of our different communities, of our different counties, of our different assets? It's a very large challenge for sure, but it's something, the good news is that we've got a background in regionalism in this community to at least attempt to continue to solve for those problems. The other thing I'd say is a challenge, Joe, to your point, that we need to continue to focus on is, as we do grow and population grows and the population changes over time, is the pressures on regionalism will be that much greater.
Absolutely.
Either more pressure to do more things regionally, and that means changing the way local governments, local municipalities do their business. That may be an issue, and it may go in the opposite way. It may be a push for less regionalism. We have to guard against that. It's hey, I live in my community, we want to be successful, but understanding the success of any one community, I don't care if it's a county or a municipality, in this region, the context is regional. So you're only going to be as successful as the rest of the region is. So it's interesting that there could be a push for much more regionalism, which will change business structures and policies and procedures, or it could go in the opposite way. And so we have to guard against that, push against, and really push us toward how can we be better regional with its own challenges.
Sure,
so
absolutely, and I think it's really, I think it's a great question to ask, considering how well Wake County and Durham County have done over the past years, and Johnson County for that matter.
Yes.
And then once you get out of that, still within the same region, you still, that same type of growth is not there, right? Especially as you move north towards Vance or Person, Granville counties. But I think it will come, it will get there.
It sure will.
So the idea of regionalism moving forward, and kind of what shape does that take? How does that look, and how does everybody kind of play together? It's going to be a real important question. And I'll have to give kudos to Wake County, man. You guys have gone out, and we now have an equitable economic developer,
right.
Danya, and he's doing an incredible job.
Sure is.
So you've really or the county commission has really put their money where their mouth is.
They sure have.
To drive this
Right.
idea of equity.
Look, and what's interesting is the concept of economic mobility isn't foreign to what economic developers do every day, right? Traditionally, what we have focused on is new jobs, investment, opportunity. That's what economic mobility is really about. It's about how do we create, if we're already in the business of supporting job growth, supporting capital investment, how do we do that in a way that's going to help all of our citizens benefit from that? And it sort of expands our horizon a little bit to say, hey, well, in order for people to have that opportunity, we need to have really good transit and transportation. We need to have a really strong education system that's going to meet people where they are. And so that idea, it's interesting because some people would say, well, this is totally foreign to economic development. And I think for a lot of us long-term practitioners, it's not. This is what we're in the business of. We do this because we're passionate about helping people get jobs, making our community better. That's in a nutshell, that's what equitable and inclusive economic development is.
I know a while back you guys had done a report through RTI that showed essentially mobility, social mobility, economic mobility, and needless to say, we didn't do all too well. The numbers are actually depressing. If you look at someone who's born in poverty and how well they get up into the next rungs of the social ladder, and it's bad in Raleigh or Wake County. It's bad in the state. It's really bad in Charlotte. But it shocked me whenever you look around at so much success. How can this be? And it's what can we do to help with social mobility and economic mobility? And the other thing I took away from that study, and I should have known this as an economic developer, the importance of early childhood care, and in some instances intervention, right? Getting that child into a structured program or something that is going to help them grow and be successful early on, and not waiting until they get into high school and you ask them, what do you want to do with your life, and they've had just not a great life leading to that. So the importance of pre-K program.
I think your reaction to the need for economic mobility is exactly the reaction that we should all have, right? It's, hey, I didn't know that there was these types of challenges that people face. And then to your point, the stark differentiation in a region that has had so much success over time makes it even more striking. And so this idea of using it as a call to action, that's what you just enumerated, was a call to action. That's exactly why we're doing this work in inclusive economic development as a region. Is we want to create that type of opportunity. We want to have that call to action for the rest of our community.
Absolutely.
It's incumbent upon us as a region to take that leadership, and whether it's us as economic developers or elected leaders, whatever, to take the success that we're all sort of experiencing at some level, and make sure that that's one of the outcomes of it, is improving that. And I'll just make a plug. I know Michael talked about it earlier, but our community college system. I mean, that is a place for someone not born and raised in North Carolina, been here for about 6 years now. Our community college system is top notch. And the opportunities, not just for people who might not make it into normal college or a four-year university, but the opportunities for people who want to change what they're doing. For people who are currently employed and just want to make it to a next level in that current employment with that current employer. I mean, there's so many opportunities there. So I think we've got to do everything we can to tout our community college system, and they can help. They can be the front line of help to get way back into the public school system to start talking about career development. That's what they do. That's what they're about. So career development is really, I think, at the heart of that. And again, it's incumbent for us. It's absolutely imperative for us to be, shouting that from the rooftops.
Yeah, there was a study done once again through RTI, the workforce development study. And there was a regional study. I think they had a response for every county in the region, but it said something along the lines over the next 3 years, of existing companies alone are going to add 30,000 new jobs. A little bit different conversation from equity, but still in that kind of the talent idea and some just issues that our region is facing. How are you guys helping solve this huge delta in between what we have today available labor force versus our companies existing here today are going to add 30,000 new jobs. It's without adding another new anything. I mean, I know you just had an announcement. It's not even counting the announcements. It's not counting any of these projects. How do you do that? How do you feel 30,000 new jobs?
I think it's a couple things. I think in our region particularly, I think the two ways I sort of think about it is, one, the existing infrastructure, community colleges, really tapping into the educational pipeline that we have here. Always going to be a way to train people and upskill people up for the new opportunities, new skills necessary to compete for those jobs. One. I think the second thing is something that this region has really benefited from over time in job creation and filling jobs is continued growth. This is why it's so important that we grow in a really smart way as a community, because we need this growth just to meet the demands of our existing companies. Yeah. Joe, your point, this study said over the next 3 years, this 30 to 36,000 jobs that we did, 15 counties, 500 respondents. This was a broad regional understanding of that growth. And to your point, if we don't grow as a region, we're not attractive to those people moving in, the right skills, the right education, our existing companies do find it hard. And that's something we have to do. So there's a little bit of a both and strategy for sure. A lot of it's also talking with them early. Existing industry, I know something you've done really well here in Garner, something we have to do as a region to really understand where are those pain points, one, where are there similarities between companies that are in Garner, in Durham, in Wendell, in Johnston County, in Chatham. If there's similarities, then how can we use a regional solution to get to your point, a regional solution to address them? Right. Instead of saying one-off solutions, instead of Garner finding a solution, Durham finding a solution, Wendell, we can find, how do we find more regional solutions for broader skill deficits or needs?
No, absolutely.
You also have to mention the quality of life aspect. I mean, we all know it. Those of us that live here, quality of life in North Carolina is, as far as I'm concerned, second to none. So we have to make sure those things are not overlooked, not taken for granted. And whether it's, entertainment in downtown Raleigh or downtown Durham, whether it's, greenways, green parks in Chatham County, wherever else. And those things have to be part of the conversation to maintain that, so that we still attract people, because the bottom line is we have to attract people.
Sure.
Talent attraction is part of what we do, for sure.
That's great. I know at NCEDA, they rolled out the Carolina Core marketing thing. I know, Timothy, you and I were talking a little bit about some of the changes going on there in the park. What is, how do you guys go about marketing the region? And I know RTRP is probably kind of more the umbrella organization that's responsible for that, but certainly you all play a part in that too. It seems like regionalism, is kind of taking hold all over the country, right? And we're seeing it right in our backyard. Chatham County, all the way over to Forsyth, is, Winston-Salem is in this Carolina Core, and then you have the biopharmaceutical crescent with Johnston over to Wilson. I'm sure you guys had something in Newburgh.
Aerospace corridor.
Aerospace corridor, yeah. I know Chris Platte down in Monroe's got his aerospace thing. So with the changes in the park that are going on, is marketing RTP, Research Triangle Park, or the region RTP, is that changing as well? And I say all that to say this. Listen, we've been really fortunate, and the Research Triangle Park has been in process since probably the 50s, right? I mean, it's been around a long time. But just like every product, you got to refresh it every now and again, right? Or it goes stale. So what are we doing as a region to remain competitive whenever we go to the market and we say this is who we are? Yeah. Or is it such a good brand that we don't even need to worry about it? Don't if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Well, I'll speak for Durham as far as the park's concerned. We've been very fortunate to attract investment from outside of the region, and I think that's key for us, again, now, but also going forward, is attract that outside investment. So there's been a strong effort to refresh those properties that are there, as well as a renewed effort to create new sites within the park, and the Park Foundation is doing a good job of emphasizing what the new employee would like to have in a work site, and all the different amenities that come along with it. So there's a lot of effort there, and I think speaking for downtown Durham, I mean, it's in the big picture, it's kind of really new still, the growth that we're seeing and the success that we're seeing. So the word's kind of out there, so there's not a lot of active marketing going as far as come see us, come be a part of who we are, but I think again our success breeds success.
Sure.
So the word is out, so to speak.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to utilize the past success that we've had in the community as a basis. But what's interesting, to your point, is this is all about evolution over time. Your point, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, today, it's been an evolution both in how we've marketed and talked about the community, broadly speaking, changed dramatically and evolved dramatically over that period of time. Even as something as simple as the industries that we focused on have changed dramatically. And I'm talking in the last decade, they've changed dramatically about what we're doing as industry and technologies evolve. So I think it's an evolution in that regard. And Joe, to your point, because of that, regionalism is more important than ever. Because what you want to be is in a community that can solve for, again, a set of complex problems. So if I'm a company or an industry group, as a company, I'd say, hey, I want to be able to solve for R&D challenges that I have and be able to manufacture or produce that product in close proximity so I can leverage my R&D. Yeah. Well, that's this region. That's what's important. That's the story we have to continue to tell. That's the sort of the evolution of what we are. So to me, it's yes, we can use the successes of the past, but those are the past. Those are important. Those are the rewards we're reaping. Those rewards today, investments we've made in the park, and that's important. Moving forward, though, it's how do we want to be and who do we want to be? That what's next is sort of who we are today. And Timothy's point is well made. Scott Levitan at the park has done amazing work helping us as a region reimagine what the park is in context of what we as a region want to be. So I think it's important that you can have these multiple strategies, whether it's in a specific community, but within a context of a region. And those things sort of can move together and evolve together and in concert. I think you have to do that to be successful today.
Absolutely. I think whenever you're looking at us, and I still think it's exciting, whenever we're competing against places like Boston and Silicon Valley and San Diego, and somehow or another RTP or the Research Triangle region manages to stack up pretty well.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And at a fraction of the cost.
Well, and that's the big thing is the level set not only for ourselves but for our community and those outside of our community of who this place is, who this region is, one of the most educated regions in the country. Beyond stacks up, in fact, outpaces many of those communities you just named. Quality of life, cost of living, those are important things. But we know we're not a low cost option. What we are is the right mix of quality, cost, and educational attainment and innovation. Those things are who we are. Really quick, that's why we do a national media campaign. We have to tell our story constantly, and you tell it as broadly as possible, because as much as we think people know who we are, you have to tell the story. You play at a parade, not a crowd. You're constantly telling the story, and that's what we're trying to do as a region.
No, you do an incredible job. I mean, you guys send us the articles and things like that.
That's great.
And the free press, and it's always nice to see this area being highlighted and folks getting it.
That's right.
And I think the proof is in the pudding. And whenever you come down here and you see the amount of people that are moving to this area, many of them are not from within the state of North Carolina.
Right.
They're from areas, California and Ohio and everywhere else in between. I mean, it's incredible.
And that's exciting.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So I think, hearing what you guys have to say, is important. And it sounds like regionalism is here to stay, right? What, if anything, do you guys see, how do you guys see it changing? Or is it going to? I think we talked a little bit about some of the threats to regionalism. But what's the future look like?
Actually, I think regionalism supports that dynamic, sort of fluid conversation, because as things happen around a region, as we're all talking, number one, communication is always a good thing, but I think for us to remain competitive, to keep sort of the core of who we are, we gotta continue to have those conversations. I think our greatest challenge, and again, take this however, because I'm one of the newer guys here in the region, but from an economic development standpoint, one of our greatest challenges is to do just that, to continue to grow as we're growing, continue to attract the people from all over the country and all over the world that we're attracting, but keep the core of who we are. We know this place is going to change. That's just part of what it is. And part of my job for sure, and I'm sure it's part of Michael's job, and maybe yours here as well in Garner, is to combat the notion that it's good enough. Let's just stop. Let's be who we are, not go any further forward. So that we know that's going to happen. So when we all sit down around the table and talk in a regional way, that's part of the conversation. It's okay. Let's make sure that we're doing this in a smart way, not just taking whatever comes and being sort of ignorant to it.
Sure.
So I think that's our greatest challenge, is to move forward in that way. Call it sustainable development, call it smart development, call it equitable development. I mean, there's a lot of ways to describe it. It's all of those things.
Yeah. I know one of the interesting things that we hear around town is that everybody that had moved here, let's say 10, 20 years ago, they don't want anybody else moving here.
Yeah.
So
They got the
it's so
benefit of
good.
everybody
Yeah, they want to pull up the drawbridge. Nobody else is allowed in. Growth was great whenever they were coming into town, but we don't need it anymore. Everything's growing too quickly. So,
It's hard. That's a hard piece of the evolution. I agree with Timothy. Is for me, it's this whole conversation reinforces regionalism is absolutely critical to what we do for a lot of reasons. Again, solving for big complex problems is why we have to have it. Two, it's evolving. What it's going to look like, what we think of our region may change over time. It may grow.
Sure.
It may contract. However, depending on density and population growth, you don't necessarily know. I think the other thing that I agree with Timothy 100% on, we've talked about this numerous times, is I think the number one fear that I have is complacency. Again, I want us to continue to evolve and grow and be the best region that we can be. I don't know what that looks like for our community. I don't know what our endpoint, so to speak, is. But there's so many amazing possibilities and potentials that it's sort of our job every day to figure out what those could be.
Absolutely.
And that's exciting.
And it's that willingness to be at the table, to talk in a
Right.
regional way.
Right.
As long as we can maintain that, I think we'll all be in a good spot.
Yeah.
I think just real quick though, they mentioned it at the state at the region there. There was agriculture innovation, and I can't remember the exact name of it. Forgive me, but you all know what I'm talking about. Essentially, taking our agricultural assets and using that to drive innovation.
Yeah.
And this idea, and I think that makes it's borderline genius in that you're combining what this area in particular, but Eastern North Carolina, the entire state, what we do really well.
Right.
We have great innovation R&D facilities in the park, downtown Durham, Raleigh, and then you take the rest of the agricultural assets around that, and it just makes so much sense that this would be the hub for that type of thing. And I think it reinforces regionalism, and the idea of why it's important, how it can work, and this idea that even though you have these nodes of dense growth, everybody benefits.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you for your time today. I appreciate
you,
it.
Joe.
Being here.
It's a great conversation about regionalism. I can't agree with you anymore. I think regionalism is here to stay, and it's probably always been here. We just now have a name for it,
That's right.
and we recognize it and try to improve it. We want to thank Bryce's Brewing for hosting our podcast today again. Wonderful location here off of Garner Station Boulevard. But thank you, Michael. Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you, Joe.
And we
Thank
will
you.
have another one. Next time we'll find
man.
another great economic development podcast to talk about. But until then, we'll keep Garner growing. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Appreciate it.